أهلا وسهلا بكم وبكم في هذه الجلسة، ويسعدني أن أكون رئيس هذه الجلسة اليوم الآن، وكل متحدث لديه 20 دقيقة لتقديم مداخلة، وبعدها 10 دقائق مخصصة للنقاش والأسئلة. ونبدأ الآن مع المداخلة الأولى بعنوان الإنزياح في قصيدة نفش ساوية والغيغة لخامس قرداحي دراسة أسلوبية. ويقدم هذه المداخلة المتحدث كوثر نجيب عسكر. كوثر أو كوثر بالعربية؟ كوثر. الكلمة لك.
آخر بيشنت خاص يلا
دخل الكمبيوتر فيو
صباح الخير، قدمتكم رختار قلت المواردين. المحاضرة مثل ما تفضل راح تكون حول الإنزياح في قصيدة نوشة سوريا والغيغة لخامس قرداحي دراسة أسلوبية. نعم، ينبغي على الباحثين في الدراسات السريانية الحديثة أن يهتموا بموضوعات أدبية لغوية متنوعة تشمل التحليل والنقد والأسلوبية وما شابه ذلك، وأن لا تكون فقط الدراسات فقط لغوية كلاسيكية. وهذه الدراسة ستحاول أن تتوقف عند موضوع مهم ألا وهو الإنزياح. ما هو الإنزياح؟ تعريف الإنزياح، أنواع الإنزياح، كيف تحدث، لماذا تحدث هذه الظاهرة، وإلى آخره. أظن أن هذه الرسالة، هذا البحث أو هذه الدراسة أعتقد هي نوعا ما جديدة إن لم أكن مخطئ في الدراسات السريانية. لهذا لربما ستصيب ولربما ستخطئ، لا بأس، لكن هي محاولة. ثمة أسئلة تطرح هنا ينبغي الإجابة عليها. ما هو الإنزياح؟ هل الإنزياح موجود في الشعر السرياني؟ ما هي أنواع الإنزياح في الواردة في قصيدة الشاعر خاميس؟ هل يمكن أن تكون الشواذ في اللغة السريانية انزياحا؟ هل هناك انزياح إيجابي، انزياح سلبي؟ ستحاول هذه الدراسة الإجابة على هذه الأسئلة. حدود البحث سأتناول فقط قصيدة واحدة، وهذه القصيدة ليس لديها عنوان. بما أنه ليس لديها عنوان فاخترت المقطع الأول، الصدر من القصيدة، اخترت ليكون هو عنوانا لها. المنهجية المتبعة هي الوقوف عند المصطلحات والعنوانات من الناحية النظرية، أي ما هو الإنزياح وإلى ذلك، ومن ثم نأخذ أمثلة من قصيدة نطبقها على هذه. وغالبية التعريفات والشروحات الموجودة في هذه المحاضرة أو في هذا البحث هي مأخوذة من مصادر عربية، لأننا بصراحة لم نجد مصادر باللغة السريانية تكتب عن الإنزياح، فلهذا نحاول أن نأخذ من العربي ومن بعد ذلك نحاول أن نطبق. وماذا سنستفاد من هذه الشروحات العربية لكي نطبقها على اللغة السريانية؟ وهل كل ما ورد في اللغة العربية موجود في السريانية أم هناك زائد ناقص؟ الدراسات السابقة كما قلت لم أطلع على دراسات بهذا الخصوص، ولهذا برأيي ربما تكون هذه أول محاولة. ما هو الإنزياح؟ للإنزياح تعريفات كثيرة وكثيرة، لن أدخل بالتفاصيل. من الناحية اللغوية الإنزياح هو لغة هو من الجذر زايا حاء، أي زاح الشيء يزيح، يزيح زيحا وزيوحا وانزاح وابتعد وإلى أي الابتعاد، العدول عن الخروج. الانزياح هو الخروج من الخط، لدي خط سكة القطار لديها خط ثابت، أقل حركة يسمى انزياحا. هذا هو من الناحية اللغوية. مصطلح هناك العشرات من التعريفات، لكن ببساطة يقول ريفاتار بأنه يكون خرقا للقواعد حينا، يعني أحيانا، ولجوءا إلى ما ندر من الصيغ حينا أخرى، يعني يا أما خرق يا أما. هذا هو باختصار تعريف الإنزياح، لكي يكون لدينا فكرة ما هو الإنزياح، عندما نشرح نعرف ما هي الفكرة. إذن كل خروج عن السياق هو انزياح، مهما كان نوع الخروج، ولكن وفق شروط. يعني أيضا الانزياح لا ينبغي أن نقول هذا انزياح خلاص، لازم، يعني هناك شروط، ثمة شروط فيها. أن يكون ناجما عن قصدية المبدع. الانزياح يجب أن يكون ناجما، أنا أعرف ماذا أكتب وليس شخبطات، لا عن نتيجة جهل بالتقنيات الكتابية. مثال، في اللغة السريانية نعرف بأن الجملة تتكون من الفعل مفعول به وإضافات أخرى. هذه طريقة صحيحة. إذا تقدم المفعول به في البداية، زين، هذا يصبح انزياحا. نأخذ جملة جدا جدا بسيطة، جملة بسيطة، يعني أخل يوسف لحمة، أكل يوسف الخبزة، أكل فاعل مفعول، جملة طبيعية. عندما نقول الخبزة لحمة أخل يوسف تقدم المفعول به، عندما يتقدم المفعول به أصبح في الجملة انزياح. لماذا هذا الانزياح؟ لأنه قلنا المفعول جاء بالبداية. لماذا جاء في البداية المفعول؟ هناك أسباب، تمام؟ إذن هذا التقدم هو انزياح، وهذا الانزياح لديه اسم، كأن يكون هذا انزياحا تركيبيا. سوف ندخل بالتفاصيل هذه الجملة. هنا في هذه الجملة أخل، إذا قدمنا المفعول به لحمة أخل يوسف، الجملة صحيحة، لا يحدث فيها أي التباس. نقطة مهمة كلش، هل أثناء الانزياح يحدث إشكال أو لا؟ إذا لم يحدث، أما إذا حدث يجب أن يأخذ المفعول به. مثلا كأن يقول محا يوسف بطرس، ضرب يوسف بطرس، الفاعل هو يوسف. إذا قدمنا بطرس في البداية الجملة لا يصح، هنا يصبح خطأ. لماذا؟ لأن هناك التباس، لا نعرف من الذي ضرب من. فبهذه الحالة على المفعول به أن يأخذ لام، كأن نقول البطرس محا. هذه قاعدة يجب أن تطبق. إذن الانزياح له شروط. الانزياح لا يعني إبداع تراكيب أو مفردات. الانزياح ليس أن نركب تراكيب، نأتي تراكيب جديدة نسميها هذا انزياح، كأن يقول شاعر يكتب الشيء يقول هذا انزياح. ليس أن نأتي ونبتكر، الكلمة موجودة، لكن أن نخلق معنى جديدا في السياق هذا ممكن. أما أنا أقول مثلا أكتب هو كتابة العادية، أخذ كلمة أكتب وأطبقها على آكل، والله هذا انزياح، لا عفوا، لا يجوز، هذا لا يجوز، لأن هناك شروط. يمكن اختصار الانزياح بسؤال يصاحبه لماذا. ما دام قلنا كلمة لماذا هناك انزياح، وإلا لماذا قلت لماذا؟ ببساطة، لماذا هذا الشيء؟ لماذا فعلت ذلك؟ هناك سبب، إذن هناك انزياح. الانزياح بطبيعته إيجابي، هناك من يعده بأنه هنا هدام للغة، يهدم اللغة، صحيح، لكن هذا الهدم ليس لأجل الهدم، هذا الهدم يأتي لتكوين لغة أقوى وأجمل وأبلغ وأقل استعمالا. الأدبي الكاتب يستخدم مفردات لا يستخدمها عامة الشعب، إذن هناك انزياح من قبل الكاتب، لكن هذا له حدود. نعم، يمكن أن يكون انزياح اختياريا ويمكن أن يكون إجباريا كما سنجده عند الشاعر خامس قرداحي. الانزياح والمصطلحات، هناك العشرات من المصطلحات القريبة من الانزياح، هناك العشرات القريبة من الانزياح. مثلا الانزياح التجاوز، الانحراف، الاختلال، الانكسار، الانزلاق، الاختراق، الخلل، الإغراب، العدول، كل هذه قريبة، لكن الأكثر قربا أجده في العدول. هناك من يستخدم مستخدم العدول، الانزياح، العدول، أو أحيانا الانحراف. أهمية الانزياح ووظيفته، تكمن أهمية الانزياح في كونه تقنية فنية يستخدمها الشعراء للتعبير عن تجربتهم الشعرية، وله إضافة إلى كونه عامل تمييز للخطاب الشعري دور جميل يسهم في لفت انتباه القارئ. هاي مهم. ومن ثم التأثير فيه وإيصاله إلى الإمتاع واللذة وتوصيل الرسالة التي يريدها. وأيضا وظيفته تكمن في مفاجأة المتلقي. أنا عندما أنتظر من المتلقي جملة اعتيادية ويأتي بجملة أدبية، هناك نوع من المفاجأة، وهذه المفاجأة تجذب الانتباه. أنواع الانزياح لدينا 3 أنواع حاليا في اللغة العربية، لربما سيكون لدينا في اللغة السريانية 4، لكن في اللغة العربية لدينا 3. لدينا الانزياح التركيبي الذي يتعلق بالجملة وبناء الجملة وهيكلية كيف تبنى الجملة، ولدينا الانزياح المعنوي الدلالي، ولدينا الانزياح الإيقاعي أو الصوتي. هنا نتحدث عن هذه 3. الانزياح التركيبي يقصد به الانحرافات التركيبية التي تتصل بالسلسلة السياقية الخطية للإشارات اللغوية عندما تخرج على قواعد النظم والتركيب، مثل الاختلاف في ترتيب الكلمات. إذن كل ما يتعلق بترتيب الجملة يدخل ضمن التركيبي. نعم، ماذا يشمل التركيبي؟ التركيبي يشمل أولا التقديم والتأخير، تقديم الجملة، والآن ندخل بالتفاصيل الموضوع. التقديم والتأخير من أجل مظاهر الانزياح التركيبي في الفن الشعري. التقديم يلعبان دورا في إدخال القارئ إلى متاهة تتسع وتضيق من قصيدة إلى أخرى ومن شاعر إلى آخر. أحيانا عندما نترجم جملة نجد الفاعل والمفعول في أماكن لا ندري أين هي، بعد البحث نصل إليها. زين، بالنسبة للتعرف على هذا الانزياح في اللغة، ينبغي أن نعرف ما هي كيفية بناء الجملة في اللغة العربية، في اللغة السريانية عفوا. الجملة تبدأ فعل، فاعل، مفعول به، تمام، هذه الفعلية. أما الاسمية تبدأ بالمبتدأ والخبر، هذه الجملة. بغير ذلك يكون انزياحا. ومن مظاهره في اللغة السريانية تقديم الفاعل. الآن ماذا لدينا من مظاهر؟ أولا يتقدم الفاعل على الفعل، ثانيا يتقدم الخبر على المبتدأ، ثالثا يتقدم المفعول به على الفعل، رابعا تتقدم الجملة الظرفية على الأركان الرئيسية كأن يكون على الفاعل على المفعول وإلى آخره. لدي الكثير من الأمثلة بصراحة، لكن اختزالا بالوقت واختصارا نأخذ أمثلة جدا بسيطة. جملة في القصيدة موجودة: دلرياوان شاوي برمزة. دلرياوان، أرياوان يعني أرياواثة، شاوي برمزة. سوف نأتي إلى هذه الجملة. هنا يتحدث فيه انزياح تركيبي قدم فيها المفعول به على الفعل والفاعل. المفعول والفاعل المفروض تكون جملة شاوي بين قوسين عزيلة، عزيلة اللي هو فرخ الغزال، شاوي بين قوسين اللي هو محذوف، والحذف أيضا هو يدخل ضمن الانزياح، سوف نأتي عليه. شاوي عزيلة دلرياوان برمزة. يسبي الغزال، فرخ الغزال يسبي الأسودة بتلميحاته بإشاراته. هذه جملة جدا قوية. يعني نحن نتوقع بأن القصائد السريانية هي فقط قصائد دينية، كلا، هنا برهن الشاعر بأنه ليست فقط قصائد دينية هناك. نعم، ثمة انزياح تركيبي آخر هو تأخر المفعول به على شبه الجملة، إذ أن المفعول به هو من أركان الجملة الأساسية، ينبغي أن يأتي بعد الفاعل لكنه تأخر في هذه الجملة. هناك لدينا جملة شري كل قطرة من لبخ، شري فعل، كل قطرة مفعول به والفاعل أنت وإلى آخره، لكن الشاعر ماذا قال؟ قال شري من لباخ كل قطرة. لماذا؟ انظروا لماذا قال هذا؟ لأسباب عدة، منها السبب الرئيس أنا في رأيي هو بأنه هذه كلمة القطرة انتهت براء، وهذه الراء هي قافية، واستفاد الشاعر من الإنزياح للحصول على القافية الرائية، وإلا كان يمكن أن يقول شري كل قطرة من لباخ. لربما في بيت آخر إذا لديه آخ يكتب بهذه الصيغة. إذن الإنزياح ساعده، وهذه الميزة الموجودة في اللغة السريانية، التقديم والتأخير لا يمكن. أيضا لدينا مثال آخر، لاو عنوايا وهان حمراء، لاو عنوايا وهان حمراء. المفروض المبتدأ هو حمراء، هان حمراء، المبتدأ هان حمراء، لاو عنوانا، لاو عنوا ياو، يعني قدم الخبر على المبتدأ. لماذا؟ لكي يحصلوا على قافية راء. نعم، ثمة انزياح تركيبي آخر في صدر البيت الأول، حيث قدم الفاعل أوراهام. هنا قدم الفاعل أوراهام كذب لبه قث، الفعل هو قث، لكن قدم الفاعل مثلا قث أو قث أوراهام، يعني قدم الأوراهام. لماذا؟ لكي يحصلوا على القافية التائية أو التاوية. لدينا هنا قث. الحذف هو أيضا من التركيب. ما هو الحذف؟ بالعربية هو إسقاط جزء الكلام أو كله لدليل. في السريانية الحذف لدينا عدة أنواع، لدينا حذف حروف النداء كما هي موجودة في العربية، لدينا حذف الفاعل ضمير مستتر عندما نقول، وأيضا لدينا حالات تدخل ضمن اللغة السريانية اللي هي الجزم موجود في اللغة السريانية بالأسماء. عادة عندما نأتي بجملة ملكة دملكة، عندما نحذف نقول ملخ ملكة، نحذف. هذا الحذف الذي وقع في صيغة الجزم هو أيضا يدخل ضمن هذه الظاهرة أو ضمن حالة، لعل ما وراء كل حذف من هدف أو سبب، فأما أن يكون من مبدأ الاختصار أو الاحتقار أو الخجل والإجلال. أنا أخجل من شخص احتراما له، ربما لا آتي باسمه. أنا أحتقر شخص، لا آتي بذكر اسمه، وإلى آخره. أسباب كثيرة. في اللغة السريانية نحصل على الحذف بأكثر من طريقة كما قلت. هنا لدينا مثال، هنا لدينا أمثلة. فلنقول الخاسة دو حب مزيغة، الخاسة دو حب مزيغة من يذعو زيلة حريغة. هنا ماذا فعل؟ حذف الشاعر مفردة الخمر، يعني الخاسة حمرة دو حب مزيغة، حذف. وهذا الحذف يأتي لعدة أسباب. هنا لا يستطيع الشاعر أن يذكر الحمرة. لماذا؟ لأنه القافية الوزن السباعي سيتحول إلى 9. لدينا هنا جملة نوشة سوية ورغيغة كذب شرار البليغة. مصطلح نوشة هو مصطلح باللغة السريانية والعربية والعبرية أيضا مؤنث. هنا قال نوشة سوية، لم يقل نوشة سويثة ورغيغة. أدخلنا الشاعر في متاهة. المتاهة الأولى استخدم مفردة المذكر أو الصفة المذكرة سوية، وهذه الصفة المذكرة نقول لها بأنها الصفة المرخمة أو جزم، هي صفة يعني بما معناه نوشة سوياي. أيضا هناك هاء يوث أو سويا فيه أيضا حذف. إذن هناك عدة حذوفات في هذه المفردة. بصراحة فقط مفردة النوشة عندي في البحث تقريبا أكثر من 3 صفحات فقط شرح عليها، لكن أعتقد هذا المثال كافي. أيضا عن طريق الجزم لدينا هنا راس برعلايا بغرة. راس برع هو رازة دور أو رازة دورة، يعني هنا جزم، هنا أيضا جزم. لو لم يستخدم الجزم لكان كل الجملة فيها طويلة، يعني دقيقتين. تمام، بس عندك دقيقتين يم عندك يمك مديون دقيقتين. الفكرة الالتفات أيضا هو الالتفات من الضمير إلى آخر، نتحول من الغائب إلى مخاطب. هنا لدينا نوشة يتحدث، هنا تحول. لدينا أساليب إنشائية أخرى، التعجب، النداء، الاستفهام. أحيانا هناك استفهام لكن لا يقصد به استفهاما. لدينا النداء كما قلت، أحيانا يحذف حرف النداء. لدينا انزلاح دلالي بالمعنى. مثلا نأخذ مثال عن المعنى على سبيل المثال في المقطع الأول، دقيقة، منها الاستعارة. هنا مثلا لدينا مفردة حبة، أخذ بالبيت الأول حبة. أو فلنأتي على الكلمة الثانية على سبيل المثال، مفردة الشاوي، هذه شاوي وهذه يد. الغزال ليس لديه يد. الشاوي اللي هو مفرد سبي، يسبي. الغزال لا يسبي. لدينا برمزة الإشارات، ليس لديه إشارات. حمراء، أنس الحمراء مفردة، هذه ننتقل إلى بسرعة إلى أيضا هناك تشبيه، داميل سينا. داميل سينا نقطة كلش مهمة، يشبه القمر، هو يتحدث عن الخمر، عن الصديق، ثم ينتقل إلى السينا، إلى القمر، ثم إلى الغزال. هناك رموز إلى الحبيبة. الكناية أيضا لدينا. نذهب إلى الإنزياح الإيقاعي الذي هو في الوزن والقافية. الوزن والقافية أيضا لديه، مثلا استخدم الإنزياحات بكثرة من أجل الحصول على الوزن وأيضا على القافية كما ذكرنا. انزياح الإيقاعي موجود أمثلة ذكرنا هذه. القافية التي استخدم نوعين من القافية. المقطع الأول 4 الأبيات قافية، وختم ببيت الخامس قافية لكل القصيدة، 4 زائدا 5. هاي الخمسة كلها متشابهة في القصيدة. هذا انزياح داخلي يتحدث عن الجناس. لدينا شقية، لدينا شقية، هذا انزياح. لدينا عطرة، تطرة، قطرة، سطرة. كل هذا فقط يختلف حرف واحد، وهذا أيضا يسمى جناس. استنتاجات، بصراحة استنتاجات بسيطة توصلت إليها، لكن لربما سيكون هناك أكثر من انزياحات. لا، أولا ورود ظاهرة الانزياح بأنواعها الثلاثة، التركيبي، الدلالي، الصوتي، بكثرة. ثانيا، انزياحات الواردة في قصيدة خاميس كانت في خدمة القصيدة وحسبت له، يعني لم تكن انزياحات، لم تكن فقط جاء بها من أجل أن يكون لديه انزياح. لا، الانزياحات خدمت القصيدة بصراحة. في اللغة السريانية حال اللغات الأخرى توجد فيها الشواذ، لكن هذه الشواذ لا يمكن أن تعد. لا يمكن أن تعد. مثلا ملبانة ملبانة، لكن دوية داوية، هذه حالة خاصة لكن لا تعد انزياحا. نوع القافية أعطت التنوع في القافية أعطى، وجاء الانزياح تارة اختياريا. والنقطة الأخيرة، بماذا توصي الدراسة؟ توسيع الدراسات الأدبية والنقدية حول ظاهرة الإنزياح بشكل خاص، والدراسات الأسلوبية بشكل عام، واستمرار مثل هذه المؤتمرات ودعمها من قبل الجامعات ورفضها من قبل البحوث من قبل الباحثين. وشكرا جزيلا.
شكرا جزيلا لكوثر. نحن نبدأ فصل النقاش. نعم، أرحب بأي أسئلة.
دكتور بسيم عرابة، بروفيسور دكتور رمزي بروالي، أستاذ في كلية الهندسة جامعة الصلاحية. شكرا دكتور وشماش الدورة على محاضرة دي القيمة والترحيب بقاري بقرمة طارق، يعني عامي حول البحث. طبعا احنا نبتي اختصاص هذا، بس انت خاصة شغلات عامة يعني.
تفضل.
من السؤال الأول، ما الدوافع التي قادتكم لاختيار موضوع الانزياح في اللغة السريانية كمسار بحثي؟ هذا السؤال الأول. السؤال الثاني كيف تقيمون؟ نعم. أقول السؤال الثاني، السؤال الأول واضح صار؟
مورو ترتب مجاوبا له قيلته.
السؤال الثاني كيف تقيمون أهمية دراسة الإنزياح في اللغة السريانية من حيث ارتباطه بالهوية الأدبية والروحية للشعب السرياني؟ السؤال الثالث
شكرا.
بس المصادر بس ما هي أبرز المصادر والمراجع السريانية التي اعتمدتم في تحليل ظاهرة الانزياح؟ شكرا.
نعم أجاوب بمختصر. السؤال الثالث المصادر السريانية، قلت لا توجد مصادر سريانية حول هذه النقطة الأولى. الدوافع التي اخترت، لا توجد دراسات لحد الآن. نحن نريد أن نطور الدراسات السريانية، نريد أن نطور، هذا ما ذكرته في البداية. التطوير في الدراسات السريانية يحتاج أن نخرج من القوقعة القواعد وأن نأتي بأشياء جديدة، نستفاد من الدراسات العربية، نستفاد من الدراسات الألمانية وإلى آخره. أما كيف نقيم هذه الأهمية؟ الإنزياح موضوع مهم جدا. يعني هذا الإنزياح يوصلنا إلى فكرة من كان كتابنا، من كان أدباؤنا. نحن نعلم بأن أكثرية الكتاب في القديم كانوا يكتبون القصائد الدينية، لكن خاميس قرداحي تحديدا، لماذا اخترت خاميس قرداحي؟ لأن لديه قصائد في الخمريات، وهذه القصائد لو نتأمل فيها سوف نجد بأنه قد خرج، جاء بقمر، جاء بالغزال. كل هذه لا يقصد به القمر قمر والغزال غزال، ولا أحيانا يحول الخمر إلى صديق إلى صديقة، وأحيانا يحول الخمر إلى دم المسيح. لم يسمح لي المجال بصراحة. فهذه كلها فكرة. شكرا جزيلا.
تفضل.
الأستاذ الدكتور عامر جميل من جامعة الموصل، متخصص باللغة الأكاديمية. دكتور كوثر، ألا يعد الإنزياح أحيانا نوعا من التوكيد؟ مثال مثلا عندما ترجم أو اشترك بالترجمة بطرس البستاني ترجمة العهد الجديد، أصر على تأخير الفعل في قول السيد المسيح الحق أقول لكم. هنا للتوكيد. طبعا هو يعني حاولوا أن يعني يثنوه على، فقال لا، هذه خصوصيات الآرامية. كما نلمسها في لغة الصحافة اليوم، يعني نسميها لغة مونتي كارلو. إلى باريس وصل الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة. قبل هذا وذلك نحن نعلم أن اللغة الأكادية تأثرت باللغة السومرية. اللغة السومرية دائما تؤخر الفعل بالأخير. مثلا في أحد قوانين شريعة حمورابي: شم أويل بيت أويل شراق الدار، إذا رجل بيت رجل سرق يقتل. شوف يعني إذا رجل
واضح يأتي بالنهاية الفعل.
كما تفيض أشعار السريان الموارنة في لبنان في أشعارهم العربية بظاهرة الإنزياح، خصوصا عند الأخوين الرحباني. يعني يقدم الاسم والضمير وكذا، وبالأخير الفعل. يعني شجر أراضي ما أعرف إيش، سواد أهلي عمروا، وحفافة ما أعرف إيش كذا، يعني زرعوا وكذا. هذه أيضا الإنزياح موجودة حتى بالعامية
تمام.
اللبنانية العربية المتأثر بالسريان، هم أساسا سريان. أشكرا.
نعم. عندما يقدم الاسم على الفعل تطرح سؤال: لماذا قدمه؟ لماذا؟ السؤال لا نأتي جواب. هذا السؤال يقودنا إلى الانزياح. أما الجواب على ذلك الحق هنا تأكيد. أما كلمة الحق بالبداية، لماذا قدمه؟ لأن أحيانا يريد أن يتوصل الشخص بأنه الاسم الذي يقدمه هو المهم. عندما نقول إلى باريس وصل فلان، يعني النقطة المهمة ليست مهمة بالشخص، ليست مهمة الشخص وصل، لكن المهم إلى أين. فهاي الفكرة من فكرة الانزياحية. هذه جملة أنت تسأل: لماذا قدم الجار والمجرور؟ لماذا قدم؟ هناك السؤال يطرح لماذا، إذن هناك انزياح. أما الجواب لأهمية المنطقة وليس أهمية الشخص. تمام؟ هذه فكرة. يعني طبعا جملة الحق أقول لكم الحق، هذا جملة فاعل. هي جملة. أما قدم انزياح خلاص. أما قوة الانزياح لماذا؟ أحيانا يدخل ضمن الاستعارة، أحيانا يدخل ضمن التأكيد إذا كرر، أحيانا يدخل إلى أهمية الموضوع عندما يقدمه. يعني مثلا أستاذ عامر التقيته، إذن المهم هو أستاذ عامر أكثر من التقيته. تمام؟ شكرا
جزيلا. نحن ليس عندنا أكثر وقت للنقاش. شكرا.
عندك دقيقتين. عندكم سؤال.
الاستراحة. Okay.
شكرا. Okay, thank you very much.
ممكن
We
بالنقاش
start with the
يصرح.
second presentation now. I would like to invite now Anton Pritula from. Anton will talk about the Erbil Poetic circle during the Syriac Renaissance period, manuscripts, authors, and general features.
Just a moment. So what should I?
Oh, good, no problem. Here you have it.
Okay, so what? Just a moment. So this and
Okay.
this. Yeah.
You
okay,
see the
okay.
next one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the microphone is
Good.
okay.
This one.
This one. So
Okay.
okay. Dear colleagues, thank you very much for inviting me to this conference. And can you hear me? Is it the microphone is working? Okay. Just a moment. Okay. So as everyone knows, the Erbil literary circle was very important in the time of so-called Syriac Renaissance, and especially in the time of the Mongol Ilkhan Hulaguid dynasty. And lately, scholars studied, this is of course the citadel of Erbil. Lately, scholars did a very intensive work studying on the main authors that originated from this city. Of course, this is the most known, the best known is like Gevargis Varda, Khamis bar Qardahi, of whom we have just heard at the previous presentation, such as Gabriel Kamsa, who was then at first he was a monk in the monastery of Beth Koke near Arbela, the monastery of Mar Savrisho, and then he became, so he probably originated from Arbela as well, and then he became a metropolitan of Mosul. I will talk about each of them in more details right now, and also there are such church hierarchs like Patriarch Denha I, who was also a monk in Beth Koke monastery of Mar Savrisho near Arbela, and then he became a patriarch. And also Timotheus II was also, for a period, he was a metropolitan of Arbela. So we can speak about a very influential literary and hierarch community or group at that period, at the late 13th, early 14th centuries. So my presentation is, most of these authors and hierarchs are very well known. My presentation is more about their connection, the connection of the city literary circle as a general, and about some manuscripts, how that was reflected in the manuscripts and how they circulated. Probably it has some connection with the manuscript circulation reflected this literary circle. Of course, this is the earliest manuscripts of the Varda collection, which are more or less well studied. You know, Varda collection was edited, then studied by various people, and so basically, what I'm going to focus on is that the connection of Gevargis Varda with Arbela is very problematic. Not problematic in the strict meaning of the term, but we know almost nothing about Gevargis Varda's biography. So he is not mentioned in the chronicles, and traditionally he is believed to be a member of the Erbil literary circle. But there is no mention of Erbil in his Uniyatha, and also, historically, as I mentioned, we know nothing about him. There are two earliest manuscripts. One of them is from the 15th century, which are available online now, and also generating from the structure of the Varda hymnological collection. We can say that most of the manuscripts, not the earliest, but some of them, have an attachment and a supplement, which follows the main corpus of the collection. And so the only hymn when Arbela is mentioned is a hymn about the deacon who converted into Islam. And so actually, this hymn is not in the main corpus of the collection. It is in this attachment or supplement. So it is not in all in earliest manuscripts, and which is more important and interesting. You see that this is another one about the deacon of Arbela, who became a treater. Sherman, exactly. Yeah, and but this is this title mentioning Arbela is in the only manuscript, which is manuscript Orient Fall 619, which is from the 18th century. If you look at the apparatus, first of all, in earlier manuscripts, it is not included in the main corpus, as I mentioned, but in the attachment at the end of the manuscript, and instead of the city of Arbela, the village Kritha Meshkilach or Meshkelech is mentioned. So later on, this unknown village was substituted to the name of the well-known city of Arbela, because everyone thought that Gevargis Varda lived in Arbela. So that's how it works. But and this is the addition by Maroš Nicak, who put it, this 18th century manuscript, he put into the main text. And the earlier manuscripts he moved into the apparatus. So it makes a kind of confusion, because it immediately connects Gevargis Varda with Arbela. So probably he lived there, but we are not sure. And though, as concerns to Khamis bar Qardahi, he definitely lived in Erbil, because by the way, this is the earliest manuscript of Khamis poetry collection, which is dated to 1395, which is really late 14th century, really unique manuscript, now placed in Mardin, in Chaldean Cathedral of Mardin, but also available online in HMML site. So and which is most important here we see, as the previous speaker told very detailed about the book of Khamis, how it is structured, and also there are lately Khamis bar Qardahi was very intensively studied. The first article was published by David Taylor, then a lot was done by Alessandro Mengozzi, then some of the poems by him were published by myself. So it has a structure of a definite Persian and Arabic poetry divan, which means that the poems are grouped in different kinds. So uniyatha, turgame, quatrains which are tar'e, memre, and soghiyatha. So the sections are grouped according to various kinds of poetry, which it has good parallels in Persian poetry. For example, this is Kemal ad-Din of Isfahan, who, by the way, was, you see, this is the analysis of the poems which are contained in his divan. By the way, I think that the book of Khamis is the only Arabic and Persian type of divan in Syriac literature. I mean, when the poems of all possible kinds are grouped in one book, following to their form, following to the poetic form. But it's a typical structure of Persian and Arabic poetic divan. So, by the way, Kamal ad-Din of Isfahan and many other poets in the Mongol and pre-Mongol period were smiths, basically goldsmiths, which actually Qardahi means. So it was probably a tradition of connection of poetry with some skills, some craftsmanship. So many people, many poets of that period were mentioned to have some craftsman connections. At least they originated from craftsman families and craftsman roots. So Khamis bar Qardahi had many poems, at least 3 on the city, about the city of Erbil. This is no question. Which were also, some of them were published and studied. And also he had composed 2 panegyric odes on Barebroe, so there is no doubt that he was a contemporary of Barebroe, so late 13th century, because Barebroe died, as we know, in 1286. So he was, Khamis bar Qardahi was probably his contemporary, and he also published a poem a memra, which is actually, by the way, these are odes on Barebroyo, which were actually published by myself. And there is also another memra, which is, as the previous speaker quite fairly noticed, which is actually a type of qasida. And this is a kind of madh qasida, which is praise to someone. And I assumed that it is a praise to another author of a praise to another author who lived in Erbil, who was namely Gabriel of Mosul, who was first a monk in the Beth Koka monastery near Erbil, and also he was. This is. I'm just rendering the poem by Khamis bar Qardahi. He mentioned that this person lived in the monastery of Beth Koka near Erbil, that he was a famous poet, and he was his contemporary. So with a large likelihood, we would say that this is a praise to Gabriel Kamsa, who at that period he was just a monk in the Savrisha monastery in Erbil, Beth Koka near Erbil, and then he became a bishop of Mosul. And so this is a kind of riddle at the end of this poem, why I actually suppose that that this is a praise to Gabriel of Mosul, because the first is a kind of riddle, a hint that his name connects some incorporeal hints or connections, and I assume that it's because of the first part of his name, which is Gabriel, which is Archangel Gabriel, which is a hint number one, and the second one that his name contradicts to his generosity and his gifts, because, and I think that is the second part of his name, which is Kamsa, which means locust. So it is a kind of a riddle for the readers, and besides, as I mentioned already, it is described in the poem that he was also a monk in the Beth Koka monastery, and he was also from Arbela, and he was a famous poet. So this is another poet from the Arbela literary circle. And Gabriel Kamsa is mostly famous for his long unitha about monastic life. It occupies some 20 or even 30 folia recto versa. So this is a very, very long poem on monastic life, which he probably composed being a monk in Beth Koka monastery. Another, which is the Sohritha by Khamis bar Qardahi, first published by David Taylor, then republished by myself. And this is, he directly says that it was composed at the Mount of Alatak. Mount Alatak was a summer residence of Ilkhanid Hulaguid Mongol dynasty. So he participated in the court ceremonies held by the Mongol dynasty, and as we know, the wives of most of the Ilkhanids of Hulaguids were Christians, were Syriac Christians, and so church ceremonies, liturgies were actually organized at the Mongol court. And so he says that it was composed. This Sohritha was composed at the court of at the Mount of Alatak, which was the summer residence, and which is the sandalwood. This is probably a stand for the books, a book stand, rahla, for writing. And then, which is most important, in most of manuscripts, and that is how it was rendered by David Taylor. At the end of the poem of the Sohritha, it says that Mar Plan Ava Mshabha, which is Lord so and so. The name is missing, Father of the East. But in the earliest manuscripts, which are the Mardin 1395 and also the 15th century Vatican manuscript, this line reads Avun Zahia Mardenha, which should be the patriarch Mardenha I, who ruled the church at that period, and whom I already mentioned. So this is this was my emendation of the text, because it is available in the earliest manuscripts, and so Denha the first. Just a moment. is, Jan the First was also a monk at some time. He was a monk in Bethkok monastery near Arbela. Then he became a patriarch, and so probably, and for some time he was also metropolitan of Arbela. So we can assume that he was just personally friend and a very good colleague of Khamis Bar Qardahi, and he took him to the court. He used to take him to the court ceremonies of the Mongol. So they originated from the same region and belonged to the same group. So they originated from the same city. And just a moment. Now, Bethkok and Erbil, and might have known Khamis in person and might have taken him to various ceremonies at the Mongol court. So, do I have a few minutes? How much time I have?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. So now, actually, the most important question to which we have reached right now is the origin and typology of the main Syriac hymnological collections of that time, Varda and Khamis. Based on the earliest manuscripts, such as the Book of Khamis from 1395, we can say, and also from the earliest Varda manuscript, which is from 1483, now kept in Mardin, we can say that originally, these books, these manuscripts, contained poems of various authors. So, the Onitha by Gabriel of Mosul was included in both manuscripts, in both Khamis and Varda, the earliest manuscripts, and also poems of Ishoyav Bar Muqaddam, which is Arbela author of the 15th century, and hymns and poems by Ishaq Shvadnaya, also an East Syriac poet of the 15th century. So we can say that in the earliest types of the Khamis and Varda hymnologic collections, they were not hymns of only Varda and Khamis, but other Arbela authors were included there. And the long Unitha by Gabriel of Mosul on the monastic life is in both earliest manuscripts of Varda and Khamis. So I would assume that at first stage of the developments, there were no books of hymns of Varda or Khamis, but there were kind of local hymnological anthologies. Formed by Arbela authors. And then at a later stage, they were divided and formed two different books. Like they were unified maybe in some 15th or 14th or 16th centuries, as many other church manuscripts in the Church of the East. So I assume that both collections originate from a type of Arbela hymnologic anthologies. And then they were kind of developed. So this is probably the main idea of this presentation. So just summing up all the above mentioned is that the Arbela Circle was a very influential group in the literary life and church hierarchy of the late 13th, early 14th century. Judging by the extant manuscripts, the massacre of 1310, which is it was a great massacre of the Arbela Christians by Muslims, which took place in this year, did not entirely cut down the significance of this city for the Syriac literature, because you know the later Arbela authors and the later Arbela manuscripts, and then various hymnological collections seem to have been originally formed from the poems written by Erbil poets. Later on, they were unified and expanded to different types. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Anton, for your presentation. We start our discussion. Do we have questions? Shabo?
Thank you, Anton. Thank you very much. I didn't understand correctly the influence between Persian, Arabic, and the Qasidas by Khamis and Qardahi. Just elaborate.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, it is a separate topic. It is a separate topic, which was pretty much. It was rather actively worked out by the scholars within the 10, 15, maybe actually 10 years. But so there was unfortunately there was no time and place to discuss it in detail. But actually, which we can say that Qasida is in its origin is definitely an Arabic poetic genre, but Ghazaliyat and Rubaiyat more originated from the Iranian tradition. And so there are ghazals in Arabic, but they are later. Like originally, from the standpoint of literary history, the Iranian literary scholars believe that ghazal was actually originally, it was a nasib of qasida, which was cut off. So it is a shorter poetic form, mostly lyrical. And tar'a, which is actually strophes, which is actually, in the meaning of Khamis, they are quatrains. They were Iranian and come long before Islam. So they were quatrains like from the Sasanian period. And so then in some point, Rubaiyat became also popular in the Arabic tradition, but also later. So it is, and there are also many kinds of quatrains in Persian tradition of different types of rhyming. I didn't have time to talk about rhyming, meter, strophe models, because it's a separate topic. I was just focusing on the Arbela connections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Because we heard here Bethqaqa monastery.
Yeah.
So we want to know what exactly is the Bethqaqa according to the manuscripts that you study. It's in the north of Arbela, I don't know, or there's any other sources that mention Bethqaqa.
Well, I think that this monastery, I cannot tell you exactly because this is not this is also not the point of my. But I think if you take Wilmshurst, a book by David Wilmshurst, the ecclesiastical structure of a church of the East, he described, I think, each diocese or the geographic location, and also by few the book of the I think Erbil Christian or Iraq Christian by few. This is also, so there are very detailed geographic and church descriptions of the point. I thank you for a good question. I will also make references on it. I will, yeah. 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 German or English? Or?
In English or?
Both English or German. Better English or Persian. Or Persian.
We will translate for you, so it's.
Okay. So.
She says she's going to talk about Bethqaqa. Yeah, and she discovered the place of Bethqaqa according to the memoir or this poet.
Okay.
Do we have other questions, please?
Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
I'm Hinda. I'm coming from Erbil, from Erbil Kurdistan region. I'm from Salahuddin University. I'm very glad to be here amongst friends. We have also a presentation tomorrow. I was thinking about, when you talk about the literary poets or literary figures in Erbil, have you come across any poem that is written in dual languages, Kurdish and Syriac? Because what we are talking about is about that exactly. What caught my attention was in one of the documents, some of the scripts were written in blue. I guess that was meant something could be in another language. When we talk about Shurayat al-Qiyamah tomorrow, we see that it is written one line in Syriac, one line in Kurdish, but with the same rhyme.
Yeah.
So have you come across something like
that? Yeah. Okay. So what I was in these manuscripts, so late 14th, early 15th centuries, in the blue thank you very much. They often usually they marked the rubrication. So this is the headings. In some manuscripts they are in red, and in some manuscripts they are in blue. In blue is basically 15th, early 16th century, basically 15th century. So, but another part of your question is very interesting, because Khamis bar Qardahi is famous for a few, actually several, bilingual poems, which is, one of them is Persian, Syriac, but this is an answer to the question by Shabotalai, because Khamis bar Qardahi definitely knew Persian, because he composed a bilanguage Persian Syriac poetry. And it's just interesting because he even incorporated parts of Persian syntagms within the Syriac lines, which is, it was also translated and edited by at least two persons, by Alexander Mengotsa and myself. And and another one which he composed, but it is not sure, because it is not, it does not occur, the Syriac Persian occurs in all the earliest manuscripts. But another one, Turkish Syriac, occurs not in the earliest manuscripts, and it was also edited, but it's interesting. Like one is in Syriac, the second one is translated into the Turkish, and this is like exact translation from Syriac into Turkish. It was also published, and by Peter Sima and myself, and but. That one maybe later, and someone believes that the Syriac Turkish is ascribed to Khamis bar Qardahi, but maybe it comes from later, maybe from early Ottoman. No one knows for sure.
Okay, do we have more questions? We have time for one question, please.
Thank you very much. How do you evaluate the number of memory and other poetic genres which are still to be published?
Well, it's a good question. It's a good question. It is huge, but Alexey, this is the question. Is it depends on what we call to be published, because there are publications based on one manuscript, for example. So you know that many critically, actually most all of them, like dozens and dozens of memory. Dozens of Syriac, actually a lot. I think in general it would be 100 or more. So it's a large corpus of texts. But once again, it depends on what if you mean critical publishing. Then that's it. Thank you.
Okay, maybe one more question. We have. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Anton. So I would like to invite Alexey Muraviev and Stanislava Khizhniakova. If it's written in Russian, in Syriac is easier for me. Diseases in Syriac medical literature. Eye diseases.
Офтальмологи, самый первый.
Потому что я выткнул. Секунду. Можно так кликать.
Okay. Good morning, dear friends. صباح الخير يا أصدقاء الأعزاء. رحمة حبيبة. I'm very happy that we made it until Berlin, and
we're very grateful to the organizers and to Professor Shabbat for inviting us. Our talk is dedicated to a very particular topic, which is mostly regarded as a part of the history of science, but it also points to the Syriac studies domain because of the nature of these documents. Well, this is one of the earliest ophthalmological scheme taken from the manuscript of the Kitab al-Ain of Hunayn ibn Ishaq, which we'll be discussing later. But this is definitely one of the earliest ophthalmology scheme which has come down to us and which originates in the Syriac milieu. Okay, let's start with the Syriac medical literature. It's, well, once Rainer Degen, to whom I'm profoundly indebted for pointing to me the importance of the Syriac medical literature, he was once dreaming of Corpus Medicorum Syriacorum. He published this in Medizinisches Historisches Journal in 1972. And, well, he was making a general apprehension of how this corpus could be structured. This is, right now, is only most important parts, the translations of Sergius Freshaina, the Archiatros of Rishaina, the chief physician of this famous city, Ras al-Ain. Al-Ain. Okay, but here this is probably the source, water source. Then there are Syriac Rufus fragments published by Matthias Wernhardt, the famous fragmental documents by Ahud Meh, the Kunnasha of Isho Bar Ali, published or mostly described by Gregory Kessel. Well, and then there are still documents which need to be found somewhere. The Khnanisha Bar Sarashwai, Khubaish. Well, most documents from the school of Bakhtisha and Gundishapur, and then certainly the corpus of Hunayn, and later medicine, for example, the volumes of Barroyo on medicine and so on and so forth. Okay, if we look at this Syriac medical literature, we don't see that much of the ophthalmology by itself, especially in its earlier part. Well, in the translation, for example, translation of Rufus, you see here the discussion of one of the medicines, and he says that this Tawal Aine, well, which is basically it's good for the eyes, but this is not very specific. He gives different recipes. I went through the collection, and that's not that much of ophthalmology. Mostly he says that some medicines are also good for eye cure. Well, certainly the second part, which is the 6th century tradition, which goes down to Sergius of Rishaina. Actually, he initiated the great enterprise of translating Galenic medicine from and correcting early translation making. Well, he made a number of blueprints that served then to Hunayn for his translation techniques. Sergius' own translations were also quite voluminous, but unfortunately, although Hunayn in his Risala mentions some of the translations of the period of Talmon, work by Galenas on the eye diseases. We have nothing left for us from it, and probably he just made some excerpts and did not the whole translation. The Book of Medicines, Kawther the Samme, which was the source of later popular varieties of it, which was published by Wallis Bodge. It's a difficult question because, first of all, it contains, as Schleifer proved once and Baumstark once remarked, it contains of Galenic translations of Galenos works to which popular Syriac recipes are added. So it's popular recipes connecting Syriac medicine and the Assyrian and Babylonian tradition. So it's mostly in the popular recipes that we see the Syriac genius, the Syriac physicians applying this very ancient knowledge cherished by the local tradition. But also we see in the recipes the Persian and Indian influence. Certainly the Book of Medicines, which was published by Wallis Bodge, is not a definite publication. As many philologists pointed out that, what Wallis Bodge made was halfway because he was not critical. He didn't realize that this is a composition made of two parts: Galenic medical treatises and the popular recipes. And secondly, there are much more manuscripts of this work that he used. Actually, in the Kunasha, which there is a wonderful article by Grigory Kessel about it. The Isho'bar Ali is called Asya Miatra, the great physician, and there is a memoir where he describes some diseases, and we see in these diseases that it's a small list that there are already, he's much more specific than the earlier authors. So something occurred between the 6th and the 9th centuries, which actually was the emergence of Syriac ophthalmology. Well, there is, I like this picture, but it has one deficiency, and this is the absence of Syriac ophthalmology. So I introduced it with the letters and kath somewhere, because the Syriac physicians, and mostly surgeons and the Hunayn, introduced into the ophthalmological system the specificity and the system that it needed. So, okay, I tend to repeat that the earliest ophthalmological sketches of surgeons are not available to us. All that is available is the Book of Medicines that probably could be traced to this earlier stage. The later stage is represented by the ophthalmological works written by Syriac or Christian, mostly Christian medical scholars, that the preceding Hunayn's magisterial work. That was Abu Zachariah ibn Masawayh, or Masoya in Persian. He was a professor of Hunayn. Ma'arifat Mihnat al-Kahalin, the oculists' examinations and other works which you see here, which were written already in the 8th and beginning of the 9th centuries, prior to Hunayn. Well, and then we have the Abu Zayd Hunayn ibn Ishaq al-Ibadi, who was certainly the one who made Syriac ophthalmology a systematic discipline. However, it was written in Arabic, but the fact that it was written in Arabic does not make it an Arabic or Islamic, as Professor Ullman once labeled it, medicine. I don't see any reasons why we shouldn't call it Syriac, written in Arabic. So Hunayn was he was active between 809 877, and he made his way through school of Gundi Shapur, where he studied under Ibn Masawayh, then in Basra, where he learned languages, and he mastered Persian and Syriac and Arabic. Well, he was certainly working under Ibn Bakhtishar in the school that became then a court physician, made a school of translations, and published a famous Risala where he discussed different translations of Galenus mostly and Hippocrates, but he was what is important for us. He made a very succinct and very useful manual, or it is usually called the complete version is Kitab al-Ashar Maqalat fil Ayn, but most people call it just Kitab al-Ayn. Kitab al-Ayn, which consisted of 10, even 11 treatises published by Merkhoff, and which are make the main bulk of the Syriac ophthalmology system. So where is the Syriac ophthalmology? It's somewhere in between Sergius and Hunayn. We will dissert a little bit on the translation techniques and terminology, but terminology is very different between the two. The first stage is certainly preserved in the Book of Medicine, so I will carefully, but all the way wholeheartedly support those scholars who think that the Book of Medicines has preserved an early stage, a Sergius stage of translating Galenus ophthalmology. And so the state of translating techniques, you see the seminal article of Sebastian Brock. Okay, the state of translating technique still needs to be described in detail, especially on ophthalmological issues. The ophthalmologists played an important role in the Arabic tradition, so we should surmise that at some point of ophthalmology in Syriac, within the Syriac medical tradition, played also an important role. But the evaluation of the first part of the Book of the Medicines still has to be done. Schleifer has shown that this is a translation of Galenus. Most people think that this is Sergius, but okay, we should make some further work on this text. And then certainly we should better make a better research on the sources of Hunayn. So there is a huge, an important number of literature, beginning with the works by Professor Ullman and Rainer Degen, then works Siam Bchairo, Grigor Kessel, Bosen Langermann, and other scholars, Beckstrasser. Certainly there is a chapter in perennial scholar Ignatius Barsaum, that is to say that the Syriac medicine is Syriac ophthalmology was flourishing to the time of Hunayn, but we'll see how it was presented in the Book of Medicines and in Hunayn. So I am
giving the floor to.
Okay, thank you. And now we are coming to my part of our presentation. And how can I change slides like this?
Right.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to compare the two main sources that allow us to judge about Syriac impact on ophthalmology. These are the Book of Medicines and Hunayn's book in Arabic. As Alexey said, we can think that this book can be considered as Syriac book also, so we can compare these sources. And first, I would like to point out that anatomy of the eye cannot be solved without autopsy, which of course wasn't approved in Hunayn's period. So the only option available to authors at that time was to cut eyes of monkeys. And of course, monkeys' eyes are similar to human eyes, but they are not identical. For example, Hunayn mentions a muscle that isn't found in human body, but monkeys have this muscle. Okay. Next, we move on the differences in anatomy of the eye according to Hunayn's version and Book of Medicines version. These diagrams are quite simplified and I think crazy, but it could be seen that there are some differences between eye anatomy in perception of these two authors. I mean that the lens, pale blue figure, in Hunayn's version is located slightly differently than in the version of Book of Medicines, and also eye consists of more tunics in the version of Hunayn. So. In this table, you can see the medical terms used by the authors of both papers, which also appear in Greek texts. And first, it is important to note that the Syriac word for tunic, kutina, is borrowed from the Greek chiton, while Arabic uses a separate term. Sometimes, to be honest, in Arabic, kutina is hijab. It's funny, in my opinion. And the Syriac term for lens is also borrowed from Greek. And also the conjunctiva in Book of Medicines version corresponds to two different tunics mentioned in Hunayn's version. The outer tunic of the eye and the retina, the tunic similar to a net, which is reflected in the Greek term, long term for conjunctiva. So the differences are in number of tunics. In Hunayn's version there are 5 tunics, while in Book of Medicines only 2 tunics and 1 more tunic, which is called by different term. So I wrote 1 plus 2. So, and also in Hunayn's version there are 9 muscles, while in the Book of Medicines only 6 muscles. Concerning nosology, the Book of Medicines compared to Hunayn's book doesn't contain such a complex classification of eye diseases. However, 3 types of diseases are mentioned. And first, there is a problem with the lens, the first organ of vision, a problem with power sight transmitted from the brain, and a problem with damage, some damage with other organs which is involved in process of vision. The Book of Medicines discusses in considerable details how to diagnose a disease based on external signs and suggests various tests, but in practice there are only 4 groups of different symptoms. The first group consists of symptoms that are recognized as vision problems. The second group consists of wounds or other injuries of the skin, and the third group consists of various secretions, and the fourth group consists of the patient's subjective sensations, how the patient can describe what he feels. However, in Book of Medicines, only various vision problems are specific to ophthalmology. I mean that in Syriac, in Greek and in translation to Arabic, there are separate terms for various tumors or other problems associated with the eye, rather than the same terms that could be used for similar symptoms, but on other parts of the body. Meanwhile, author of the Book of Medicine doesn't make any distinctions. For example, to refer to a sore on the eye, which in Greek and Arabic has a special term. In Syriac, it's just the same term, huviana, which is used for such symptom on other parts of the human body. And another interesting feature on the nosological examples is that there are some pairs of terms that are similar in Syriac and Arabic, and because of the fact that the patterns of these words are predominantly Syriac, not Arabic, these words could be borrowed from Syriac into Arabic. What conclusions can be drawn about the nosological system? First, Hunayn's nosology is much more specific and reflects a higher level of development of ophthalmology as a separate branch of science, because the separation of particular field of study means that you have specific terms and specific concepts for this field of study. And these terms are partly absent in the Book of Medicines. Second, many diseases are very clearly expressed in Hunayn's version, but are not reflected in the Book of Medicines. For example, a common disease in Hunayn's book, such as hypersarcoma on the eyelid, something like a tumor on the eyelid, isn't described at all in the Book of Medicines. And finally, the Book of Medicines. In the Book of Medicines, there are cases where certain symptoms or diseases don't have any term, but are explained as in a descriptive manner, like you can see, like somebody who can't see subjects which are clear to him. So, regarding different medicines. Okay, sorry. Okay, Syriac ophthalmology has originally, as Alexey said, two big periods of translation, between which the Book of Medicine represents the earliest one, while Hunayn's Kitab the latest one. And it should be said that the system of ophthalmology that we see in Hunayn's book is much more developed in all aspects. So the Book of Medicines reveals an intermediate stage of the development of ophthalmology as a science. And also, it not only emphasizes, as Alexey said, the fact that this Book of Medicines can be dated back to an earlier period than Hunayn's writings, but it also affirms the role of Syriac language as the language in which all these working notes, all these middle translations were made before the preparation of a professional and high-quality translation into Arabic. And this doesn't diminish the importance of Syriac in the history of medicine, but unfortunately it limits the number of writings in Syriac about medical topics. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We don't have a lot of time for discussion, only 5 minutes. Do we have questions? Shabo?
Thank you very much. There is a huge time between, let's say, Yusuf Rash'aina to Hamid ibn Ishaq, so the knowledge science developed, of course. We have seen that it's much more detailed, that's the reason of the time, but I'm actually wanted to think of the book, of the third chapter of the book you mentioned, the Assyro-Babylonian origins of some Syriac recipes, which is published recently digitally by Gela. So it's a clear relation, old Babylonian, let's say Babylonian traditions kept alive in Syriac and continued being used and translated into Arabic. This is one thing which is very interesting to mention. The other is that the authors, the Syriac authors, when they translated to Arabic, they translated it not for foreigners, they translated for themselves. They were the same people shifting from Aramaic or from Syriac to Arabic. It's the same people. So the literature, the Arabic literature written by these people was actually meant like modern people saying we are Assyrians or Armenians speaking Arabic and speaking Kurdish or whatever, because they shift just linguistically, but the way of thinking is the same. So it's very interesting what you mentioned.
Thank you, Shabo, for this important remark. We perused the book on Babylonian medicine, but there is not very much to be in the matter of anatomy or physiology or therapy. It's not very much to be compared to the Book of Medicines of Hunayn. However, as far as recipes are concerned, there are quite a lot, and Nicholas Algilou was publishing the popular works and popular versions of this Sparsam and Sparsamam and other works circulating even in modern times. Nicholas told me that even his relatives were using some of the recipes, which are certainly the recipes are connected to the Babylonian tradition, but not the systematic medical part. As far as the continuity of thought which is concerned, certainly Syriac physicians were shifting from one language to another, but they have had Syriac mind. That is important. And this Syriac mind permitted them to adopt the Greco-Roman Galenic medicine and put it in the Semitic terms.
Thank you.
Thanks. Did the Syriac medical manuscripts talk about the amblyopia discuss as specials of children? يعرف بالعربية الغطاش الغمش. تكلمت المخطوطات السريانية عن هذا المرض خصوصا يخص الأطفال كمرض الأطفال. amblyopia. الغطاش أو الغمش.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's useful. There is a certain difference between the classical medicine, what they see, for example, in Al-Razi, Hawitib, and in Ibn Sina, which was much more specific even than Hunayn, because writing in the 11th and the 12th century, certainly there was much more time of medical practice and medical theory developed. So, but there is a slight shift in the medical terminology between Hunayn and Ibn Sina. But okay, thank you very much. Anyway,
thank you very much for Alexey and Stanislava. We meet in 30 minutes and we have a coffee break.